Hannah and I have 4 children. Charlotte is the first of 4, and the memories of the other 3 births have since blurred together over time. The exact details of the many doctor's appointments and all of the anticipation during the weeks leading up to those great events have all become a little bit blurry over time, but I remember the birth of Charlotte the best. It was 2013. It was a really busy and chaotic time in our life. I was completing my university degree while working part-time in a local church during the day, while also working a second part-time job in logistics on evenings and weekends. It was a really busy time in our life. But I remember sitting in the hospital room. I remember baby Charlotte had been born by a cesarean section. Now, she was sleeping in her baby bed, and next to her was Hannah, who was resting in between visits and in between the occasional nurse coming in to check on charts. I was there. I was sitting in the corner with my textbooks open. I was studying New Testament Greek and Cartesian dualism, trying to prepare and get myself ready for an exam that was fast approaching, when suddenly I suddenly became aware of the magnitude of the last 24 hours. I stopped what I was doing. I looked up from my books. I looked around at the sterilized hospital room, and the full realization of what had just happened suddenly sunk in. Not only was I a husband, but I was now a father. And because of this baby, my life was never going to be the same again. This little baby was going to change my life forever. And as I consider my life as a father, as a husband, and even going further back in time before all of that, I can say it's true in a similar way, although with its differences, of another baby born into this world that changed my life forever. Another baby that would change my life forever, born 2,000 years ago in a manger 2,000 miles away. Jesus of Nazareth, who existed before all time began, but who, as the Bible reminds us, came into the world as an infant to grow up in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and with all the people, who stepped out of his wilderness temptation to preach the good news of God's coming kingdom, a message of repentance and belief. Jesus, who came to save men and women from their sin and to welcome them into a relationship with God. When you meet Jesus for the first time, your life will never be the same again. You see, when you meet Jesus, considering his words and his works and his life, assessing his claims through reason and understanding, but ultimately accepting through faith that Jesus is who he claims to be, once you meet this Jesus in this way for the first time, life will never be the same again. Jesus came into this world, as the gospel narrative reminds us, to be the Savior of the world, living the life I could never live and dying the death that I deserved to die because of my rebellious, my disobedient, lawless heart. Jesus would die on a cross, and he would rise again from the dead, conquering sin and death, reigning as Lord and King over all, and who will one day come back, as he's promised us in his word, for those who put their trust in him. But that's just one part in God's redemptive plan that we learn about in the Bible. The entire scope of God's plan is not just the saving of lost souls, not just escaping from this life into the safety of an afterlife, but the great plan of God is for the renewal of all life, and even more than that, the renewal of all creation, new creation. Everything wrong in the world will one day be made right. We learn about this in our Bible in Revelation chapter 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and he will be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death. There will be no more mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order has passed away." He who is seated on the throne said, "I am making everything new." And that's the hope of the Christian, That's my hope, and I pray that it's your hope as well. That whether we live or whether we die, we are safe with God because we belong to God because of this Jesus. Jesus who resides not in a dusty history book on the bottom shelf, but one that we learn about in God's revealed, relevant word. And that's the Bible. And when we meet him truthfully, and when we meet Jesus genuinely for the first time, our life will never be the same again. And there's a Latin inscription that reads, "Para unt et impotantur," and it essentially means the hours perish and are laid at our charge. You see, our time here on earth, our life is both a test, but it's also a trust. How will we use it? And what are we going to do with it? For me, when I began to take my Christian faith seriously, faith was always an action, something that I did. It was a belief that I had, but it was something that I implemented in my daily life. True Christianity is a living faith made visible, made real through a changed life from the hour we first believed onwards. But it also makes an appearance in a changed perspective towards life. How we choose to view and understand circumstance and time and situations that we go through. Once you meet Jesus, life will never be the same again. How did it change for me? Firstly, some of my friends, when they found out that I was going to take Christianity seriously, they didn't abandon me. Some did, others didn't. But I did feel as though everyone was looking at me differently, looking at me and assessing me a little bit closer than they had before. But my view of life changed as well. You see, I'm committed to the view that God is there, that he does exist, and that it's possible to know this loving God who gives not just stability in daily experience, but also meaning to life's existence through the person of Jesus Christ. Because of Jesus, I have hope and wisdom in everyday tasks. Because of Jesus, I have found food for an intellectual hunger and food for a spiritual hunger as well. In Jesus, I have found fulfillment and satisfaction, a hunger and a thirst that has become for me an energy in which I am able to seek and to serve and to see and to worship and to know God and to love God's creation around me. And it's met in the Lord Jesus Christ. Secondly, there came an awareness, an awakening in my life and heart that life itself is a gift. It's a trust. It's a test, as that Latin inscription reminds me. And I wanted my life to be used by God. I wanted to make myself available to God to use in whatever way he saw fit. It was the cricket player and missionary C.T. Studd who wrote in that hymn, "Only one life. Only one life will soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last." You see, faith is not an addendum to our existence. It's not some sort of existentialist virtue that we have to absorb into our thinking. Faith is personal, but it's also the fundamental energizer of life. Authentic faith in Jesus transforms us and empowers us to trust God, but to also do good in God's name, to take God at his word, and to step out in faith come Monday morning, recognizing and accepting that God has a plan, that God has a purpose wherever we find ourselves in life, in the simple, the fun, the difficult, the mundane tasks of ordinary life. It's in those places that the providential hand of God has put us for a reason, and that reason is to bring honor and glory to his name. Having made a profession of faith as a young child, it wouldn't be until my mid-teens where I began to consider the claims of Jesus closer, and I began to reevaluate the authenticity of the profession I had made earlier in my life. I was raised in a church-attending home, and I was brought up in Sunday school. Isn't that what makes you a Christian, taking part in religious activities? No, there's more to it than that. I moved through the motions of this religiosity, but I didn't feel much about it. I didn't care much about it. But having witnessed the impact of the faith of others around me at that time, fellow students who were ambitious, who were bold, and who were ready to claim their corner for Christianity as it intersected with life and daily living, I realized, witnessing the vibrant faith of others, that my own life was spiritually barren, that I was entirely confused and my life was found to be immensely wanting. Despite being raised a Christian, my own apathy and coldness towards Christianity began to bother me more and more. I became increasingly disturbed, and there came a time when I asked God to restore wasted time in my life, but to also make alive areas in my life that I knew were dead. My thoughts, my speech, but ultimately my human heart. Needless to say, my teenage years were a time of reflection. They were a time of reorientation of priorities and desires. I was baptized in my local church when I was 16. And as I began to consider the Bible as it related to myself and others around me, the richness and the profundity of life began to open up before me. I continued going to church. I became more involved in serving in different ways in my local congregation. As I learned to pray and as I opened myself up to the Spirit of God, the more I became aware of the needs of others around me, but also of God's provision to deal with the thorns both within my life, but also the thorns that I encountered in the world. I was privileged to go to Mexico on a missions trip twice in the mid-2000s with the youth group that I was involved with, a ministry run by the church I was attending at the time. And these experiences awakened in me a reality of human need, both physically, but also spiritually, along with the fact that there was a whole world out there to explore, but a world that is ultimately sitting in spiritual darkness. And as I began to make more room in my life for the gospel of God, the greater the sense of call I felt to not just serve God in a church casually, although there's nothing wrong with that, but my call was to enter full-time Christian ministry. And this desire was affirmed and encouraged by the leaders in my local church. After graduating high school, I would begin a journey that would take me from Canada to Scotland to study for ministry, where I would meet and later marry a young woman from Scotland. 2 weeks after our wedding, we would move back. We would move from Scotland to Canada to start our new life together, for me to begin an internship, and ultimately for me to complete my university studies. It was in my last year at university that Charlotte was born, and life would never be the same again. Life became busy with family. God blessed us with more children along the way. Work increased, and further life changes occurred. We were moved from the west coast of Canada to central Canada, where I would take my first pastorate in a small community church. We would be there for nearly 5 years before God would move us again, this time to the northeast of England. And something I've learned during the last few years is that wherever you are and whatever you find yourself doing, keep God at the center of your planning process, and you won't go wrong. Even when circumstances and setbacks take you by surprise, keep God at the center of your planning process, and you won't go wrong. When people ridicule you and revile you, keep pressing forward. When you let people down, when you stumble and when you fall, do your best to be reconciled to every situation and keep pressing forward. When life is puzzling, remember that God is planning. Every mountaintop and every dark valley experience, every green pasture and every desert we go through in life is all part of the great drama of life through which flows one vast, mysterious purpose for the will of God to be done. Over the course of time, I've hit some great highs, and I've also sank to some new lows, and I've had my share of arguments with God. But through it all, I've learned that when I cannot control things, only when I'm willing to trust God with the outcome, regardless of what that might look like, only when I am weak, it is then that I'm strong. What I need most of all, each passing day, is for the transforming work of God to reign and rule and do its work in my heart and my daily experience. Total commitment to Jesus is really difficult, one that I'm going to struggle with for the rest of my life. But I know whom I have believed in, and I am persuaded that he is able to keep that which I have committed unto him against that day. For me, this is the only life worth living. The world is ready, and the harvest is ripe for men, women, and children to accept the call. Come follow me, Jesus said. And when you meet Jesus, and when you accept his call, your life will never be the same again.